And the reason that I feel that Christianity is so significant is because it's significant with regards to every single issue. But now that we don't have, as we did with the previous project, an attempt to completely control ideological life through politics. We're not going to be altering language wildly and radically. We're not at war with nature and old taxonomies. We're not seeking to annihilate the principle of God that we may lay claim to his kingdom. I wonder how these new forms of government may evolve and unfold. And I wonder how these new forms of nationalism might develop.
Well, we've been, for this ARC enterprise, we've been trying to wrestle exactly with that issue. And I think your comments about, Elon, let's say, as a globalist force that isn't exactly akin to the previous globalist force is like, well, maybe we've tried to distinguish this technically in our discussions at ARC. Okay, so here's some principles. You tell me what you think about them. Policy that requires force and fear is indicative of, it's at least suboptimal and it's probably tyrannical. So that one of the ways you determine whether a policy is acceptable is whether or not it's invitational, right? And so it'd be like, I make you an offer and hopefully you're on board voluntarily, which would make you a much more efficient participant as well. And even if you're not fully enthusiastic about it, you can't think of a better alternative that you would lay claim to, right? So it's like, you can imagine if we're going to negotiate reasonably, we might say, well, we're going to be duty bound to accept the best offer we can conceive of, right? I mean, hopefully it'll be one that also fills you with enthusiasm, but in the absence of that, at least you won't be able to think of a better alternative. So no power, no force, no fear, right? And then the other thing that we've toyed with, let's say, or played with is the idea that not only does the vision of the future have to be invitational, there has to be an element of play about it, because like I studied play fairly deeply neurophysiologically, and play is a really interesting motivational state because it's very fragile. It can be disrupted by almost any other motivational state. So the sense of play, which is like direction with variability, right? Because that's play, is direction with variability. That only emerges when the situation, say, of communication and cooperation has been optimized. So then you might say another way that you can tell if the venture is proceeding well is that if everybody engaged in it can engage in a sense of play. And I like the play idea, partly because it's voluntary, obviously, but also because play implies a fair bit of tolerance for deviation along the pathway.
Yes, for vicissitude. Now, I'm assuming that your experience as a clinical psychologist must be primarily interpersonal, although you will ultimately be dealing with large data sets.